Dr. Sarah Holenberg, who is professor in the Department of Art History here at the U. She received a BFA in Fine Art from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and PhD in Art History at the University of California.
Southern California.
Yeah. Sorry. Southern California in 2012. And she's been teaching for the last several years at the University of Utah. She specializes in the art and visual culture of the 20th century with a focus on the intersections of mass culture and visual art in North America. So we're really pleased that she's here and willing to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to meet you guys. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I tend not to follow a sort of strict lecture model, but prefer some back and forth. I know you guys have come here after a whole day of teaching. So on the one hand, it's kind of unfair to ask you to engage. On the other, I worry you'll fall asleep if I don't call you out. I mean, you're all familiar with the challenges of pedagogy. So I just wanted to get a sense, first of all, of what your relationship to this new category of global contemporary is. How many of you have already taught it to your students? Nobody. So it's all brand new. Okay. How many of you have gone over the material on the Khan Academy website? Show of hands. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar, Khan Academy is actually, it's pretty useful. It's a general sort of free education online site, and their art history section is quite good. And they have sections on each of the works in your curriculum, all of them. They have an essay and or a video. So that's a really great resource for you guys to go to in an emergency. But what does this mean for you, global contemporary? What are we talking about when we say global contemporary? You, in the animal print. I'm just going to call you guys out by what you're wearing and your facial hair and stuff, because what is global contemporary in your mind? Like, what does that mean?
My first thought is just looking at artists who are working now, and that are artists that our students are going to be, because it's their time period that's happening now.
Okay, so it has this relevance in that it is contemporary, it's now. It connects to popular culture often, to digital culture and online culture in really interesting ways. Yes?
I think it's concepts, right? So contemporary is concepts. So before, it's always done, suddenly you got this concept of something new. And it's sometimes hard to actually teach that to students that don't understand art about, why is this dot so important in this compost? But it's the concept of creating that dot, which makes it so intriguing to me.
Do you guys, I don't think I looked to see if this was in the sort of modernism curriculum, but do you teach like Malevich's Black Square? That's probably for the best, because it's brutal. Like, this black square means zero. There is this sense that you have to find a way to give students that background on what can seem like very simple objects. Yeah.
I think that's really the thing that's intimidating for me, is that I feel like there's, so much historical context for it to make sense, where, maybe not so much in the others. It's there, but I just feel like, I don't want to tackle the contemporary till they have all this other background, so that they can pull on that to make sense of this and like bring it all together. Right,
and they do. You go in chronological order with your students. You begin with the ancient and you move on to the contemporary. Is that how it operates for you? Yeah. And sorry, you had your hand up?
Well, the only other global group in looking at the content areas is global prehistory.
Yes.
And I think that's more in with prehistory, it's more maybe, and this is my first year teaching it, maybe more in the interest of numbers. But with global contemporary, it's it's so interesting to actually be looking at the art all over the world. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to look into Africa, we're going to look into what's going on in Italy, or things like that. And I have a lot of students that just cannot wait to get, because this is
good.
They're interested in, because you can ask these questions. Well, what does this black square mean? Why is this art? Why?
Right.
And they're excited to ask those questions.
Good. So. You have good students. Send them here. Okay. And you had?
Well, I think it's cool too that I think the reason why this unit, as opposed to every other content area, is global, is the world has become a much smaller place. And you have African artists working in Brooklyn, and South American artists working in Berlin, and it's We're all interacting, we're all chatting, we're visiting each other.
We're networked in an instantaneous way. Now, one of the things that I want to address today is the fact that like a globally networked culture is not a new thing. It's been around for a long time, but it's gone into hyperdrive, and it's a part of our everyday lives all the time. The sort of separation between London and Nigeria is not what it used to be. You don't have to take a boat anymore. So we're going to look into that. Now, one of the issues that we run into with global contemporary, up until, say, the 1970s, even early 80s, you have movements. You know, you have abstract expressionism, minimalism, conceptual art, and you can organize things around these movements, these units, which often means organizing things around groups of men in New York City. I mean, that is fairly consistently what happens. So when we go into the global contemporary, we lose the security that comes with movements. But we also have this opening out into a much more sort of diverse range of voices, which I think is very exciting. So just to give you a sense of how I'm going to organize things today, we're going to start with 3 artists who are sort of exemplary of this idea of global contemporary. Yinka Shonibare, Shirin Neshat, and Mariko Mori. So these are all artists who are known very well for the ways in which they represent specific cultural histories to people who are not necessarily tied into those histories. They offer a sort of visual translation of cultures and histories that are often unfamiliar to their audiences. Then we're going to look at 3 American artists who all engage with the idea of the other or otherness within American culture. Now, when I say other, if I say it like with quotation marks and a capital O, what do I mean?
Well, I think it can mean lots of things, but like difference, you know, things that are outside of mainstream majority culture.
Yes.
Minorities, you know, other sort of lesser represented ethnic or cultures.
Yeah, in general, when the term the other, as we use it here, really came into common usage in psychoanalysis. And it's that which is not me. I know who I am because of what I'm not, and I need to be able to see what I'm not in order to know who I am. So I came up with an example of this with my students sort of on the fly the other day. So no political message implied, but for example, if we were to take Donald Trump and his comments about Muslims and Mexicans. Those comments, that commentary isn't based on any actual sort of verifiable knowledge about Muslims or Mexicans. They're based on his image of what it means to be American and what it means to be not American. So he's, in a very sort of classical way, othering these groups in order to establish a specific form of American identity. So the artists that we're looking at in relation to this today are, it looks like I didn't actually list them, although you'd think I would have them all locked in. Here, we'll just, here you get a preview. Joan Quick-to-See Smith, Pipon Osorio, and Kara Walker. And then we are looking at the ways in which memorials relate to space and place and identity in our sort of final section.